Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, here to give my review on Moana, which is the 2016 brand new Disney animated classic, directed by Ron Clements and John Musker, starring the voice talents of Auli'i, Cravalho and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. This is the 55th Disney animated feature, or 56th if you're going by the US listing, and if you've seen any of my other reactions or any other reviews on Disney things I've done in the past, you know I'm a huge Disney fan. I own all of the Disney animated features on DVD and the brand new slipcovers that come out, and I still own many of my old Disney VHS tapes right on my shelf there. I'm a huge Disney fan. It was my childhood, and it still hits me right in the nostalgic feels every time I watch one of those films. So I was insanely hyped for this movie, especially with the directors Ron Clements and John Musker coming back on board, who have directed many of my favourite Disney films in the past, including The Great Mouse Detective, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, Treasure Planet, The Princess and the Frog, loads of my favourite 2D animated films, and this is actually their first 3D computer animated movie they've ever made, and I think they made a fantastic transition into that. First off, before I get into the film itself, I did want to talk about the animated short that preceded the film called Inner Workings. It's a beautiful little short film. I thought that only Pixar did animated shorts, but I think in the last few Disney have started doing them too with their own animated features, and it's an amazing little film. It really, really is. I think in terms of the animators they have on board, if you look at Moana and you remember back to Inside Out, the animated feature at the beginning of that called Lava, you can definitely see that they had the same animators working on, and there's a lot of similar elements which I'll get to in my spoiler section for the Moana review. And in this one, the animated short, it's very much in a similar vein to Inside Out, so I think a lot of the animators probably worked on that, because you can definitely see some ideas blending between the two, whereas Inside Out, it's the emotions that have a personality and have a life of their own. In this animated short, it's all the internal organs, such as the brain, the heart, the intestines, all that stuff, but it's done in a very humorous way, but it also has a hard-hitting message to it as well, which really got me. I'm usually a sap at most of these animated films, and I will be honest, I did cry many times during this film, and the animated short itself almost got me as well. So I wanted to bring attention to that because I definitely think it deserves some credit. But with that being said, let's get into the review for Moana. So as always with these reviews, I'm going to start with spoiler free, so you don't have to worry about anything getting spoiled, and then when I move to my spoiler section, I will let you guys know. So the plot for Moana tells the story of Moana, the strong-willed daughter of a chief of a Polynesian tribe who is chosen by the ocean itself to reunite a mystical relic with a goddess. When her island begins to wither away and die, Moana sets sail in search of Maui, a legendary demigod, in hopes to save her people. So right there, when I saw the trailers for this thing, and I saw just what the animation was doing and how they were taking this culture of the South Pacific and bringing it to life in a Disney film, I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. And if I talk about the directors again, so if you've seen any of my previous reactions, you know that I'm a huge proponent for 2D animation, and sadly now it is kind of a dying art. It really is. Like, my favourite Disney films out of their entire filmography are the ones that came out in the 90s, or at least 89, from like Little Mermaid all the way really through to Tarzan, are definitely the ones I go back to all the time. I think they really nailed the formula with that one. And I remember when the shift came into CGI animation for Disney, which was really after their film Home on the Range, when it moved into Chicken Little. They had a whole span of films there that really didn't connect with me, and it really felt like they'd lost their touch and lost what made Disney great in the first place. Since then, we've only had one other 2D animated classic from Disney, or two if you count the US listing. Princess and the Frog I loved, but sadly didn't really pick up much attention. Don't think it made all that much at the box office. And also Winnie the Pooh, which was a very, very short version, came out in 2011. Didn't pick up much traction on that, so it seems like CGI animation is the way to stay. And I watched an interview actually with the directors from this movie, Ron Clements and John Musker, who said that, you know, at first it was very difficult shifting into 3D animation because they hadn't done it before. It was their first time experimenting with it, and they said that the process itself is very different. You still go through all the storyboarding stages, which was brought in with the first animated classic Snow White back in the 30s, and it's lasted all the way through now, and loads of other films have adopted that style of taking storyboards in terms of their pre-production. And they said that it's a lot tougher creating the character models in a computer, but once they are created, the entire film is just much easier to produce. It's a lot quicker than it would be with 2D animation. Bearing in mind this is a film that's been in production for 5 years, which is absolutely incredible. To go 5 years back and just say, like, right, we're going to make a film now, we've got an idea for a film that's going to be in fruition in half a decade, it's incredible. And this film was originally going to be in 2D animation. Having seen the film now and having seen some concept art myself and some early storyboard designs of Moana herself, personally, I would have loved to have seen this in 2D animation, and I would love to see the day that Disney go back to it. However, I don't think that's going to happen, and I think I just need to accept that. But really, when you do see this movie, the freedom they have and the feats they achieve with the CG animation in this is flawless. And even looking at CGI Disney films before this that have come out, such as Zootropolis, Big Hero 6, Frozen, or Tangled, this surpasses all of those movies in terms of its animation. It really was tear-inducing stuff just to see the water and the effects and the hair. Just the attention to detail in all of this animation is incredible. And just to see how fast CG animations come within the span of like a year, it's insane, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of those films where you have to see it on a big screen. You just sit back and you just get immersed in the film, and the immersion in this film and the culture itself is one of the best things about this, and it's definitely one of my favourite modern Disney films. In terms of the animation, though, there is a slight bit of 2D animation in there, which I appreciate. On Maui's tattoos, they're all done with hand-drawn animation with the animator Eric Goldberg, who has worked on previous Disney films before. I think the first one he worked on was Aladdin, with the same directors on this. And it's nice to see. It's very subtle. It's not all the way through the movie, but when it happens, it is that nice throwback to what made Disney animation great in the first place. And in terms of the tattoos and how they move around and the actual designs on them, with the directors having worked on Hercules, if you remember back to that movie, the designs themselves do look a lot like the pottery artwork, especially with the muses and the song numbers in that movie. Definitely looks a lot like that, and I will go into some similarities this movie does have with previous Disney movies, because there are a lot, especially within the story and some of the personalities and characteristics of those characters, but I'll get into that as I move through the review. So let's get on to characters now. So we'll start with our titular character Moana, played by Auli'i Cravalho. She is fantastic in this movie. She really is. I think when she initially joined this project, she's 14 years old, 16 now, and you see her in interviews, and there's just such a maturity to her as an actress, and she pretty much just brings this character to life. I think Disney auditioned like hundreds of actresses to play the lead role, and she was actually the final audition of the day, and she got given the part. They'd already created the character model for her, and it was pure coincidence that the actress herself looks the spitting image of her character of Moana, and I think when they got her in the recording booth, they applied a lot of her mannerisms to the character herself in the final film, and she's just such a likeable hero. And, you know, with Disney's track record of female characters and their princess lineup, you go back to some of their early films and they really are mostly sort of like doting, waiting on a man, helpless individuals, or pining after a man, if you would go back to Ariel, for example, in The Little Mermaid. There are a few exceptions to this rule, such as Belle from Beauty and the Beast or Mulan. They really are the standout, and Moana definitely follows suit. And I think that Disney have matured a lot now, especially with their last few movies, in how they handle their characters, especially their female characters. And that's definitely the case with this movie too. And Moana herself as a character definitely does have a lot of those similar qualities that are used in a lot of old Disney films. For example, there's moments in this film where she breaks into song, yearning for a better life, a change from her current situation. There's the whole overbearing parent mechanic, which is definitely straight out of Little Mermaid, for example. And I've actually spoke to a lot of people who've already seen this film who like the film, but also acknowledge the fact that this film really didn't advance from Disney's classic tropes, as films such as Zootropolis did before it, which really did touch on contemporary issues involving racism and segregation and persecution, which really isn't prevalent in this movie. It is very much a film where Moana is questioning her identity and needs to go on this adventure to find herself as a person and learn something, which is very much a tried and tested story in terms of Disney. But it's one I don't have a problem with, and I really don't, and it works for the film because I think that Disney is strongest as a company when it does have those traditional fairy tale-like elements to it, and this movie absolutely does. And I think it was a nice return to form for Disney. I absolutely loved Zootropolis, and I loved Tangled. However, along the way, I think with Big Hero 6, although that's not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination, it didn't feel like Disney to me, and I think that's the way that a lot of these modern CGI ones are. It doesn't feel like classic Disney, whereas this one absolutely did, and I'm sure that's down to the direction. As I said, they have directed some of my favourite Disney movies ever made, and this is absolutely going to be on the list for that. It really, really is. I've actually seen this movie twice. I went to see it opening day, and I did want to immediately jump on a review, but I knew that it was a movie I wanted to see multiple times to really give my cohesive review for it. So that's why this review's been a little bit later. But let's move on to Maui, played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. This is such a larger-than-life character, and really, although this is a very fresh character and I haven't had those years to really let it sink in, I definitely think this is a character in the same vein of Robin Williams' Genie. Even has very similar elements to it. He has a musical number in the film called You're Welcome, which really reminds me of Friend Like Me from Aladdin. He doesn't have all of the contemporary jokes and shape-shifting into celebrity personalities like he did in that movie with Rodney Dangerfield and Jack Nicholson, for example. He does have one contemporary joke in this movie, which I actually did kind of roll my eyes at, and I thought the film could have benefited without. It's a tweeting joke. The clip's been released on YouTube. He's basically using a chicken to autograph one of Moana's oars that she's got from her boat. And he says, when you sign your name with a chicken, it's called tweeting. And I really could have done without that. It did feel very out of place for the movie and even for the character himself. But in terms of his character himself, Maui is a very larger-than-life character. He's very arrogant and egotistical. And not to say that Dwayne Johnson has any of those qualities by any stretch of the imagination, but I think his charisma and his natural charm that you see him in interviews or any of his other films, he is able to bring that to the character of Maui. And I definitely think that Maui is going to go down in Disney's history as one of their best characters they've created. His tattoos in the film are very funny as well, and there's a lot of great comedic moments between Maui reacting to the little tattoos moving around, which all animate by themselves and have their own little quirks. And there's a lot of good banter between Maui and his tattoos. I thought that was a really nice feature, a nice little character trait that carries on all the way through the movie. And as I say, I think the design for him is fantastic. There's also another comedy sidekick in the film as well called Hey Hey, who's a chicken who's voiced by Alan Tudyk. And Alan Tudyk now seems to be like Disney's good luck charm. He's been, you know, a small part in a lot of their previous films. He was in Zootropolis, he was in Frozen, for example, and he's in this. You couldn't really tell it's him because he makes chicken noises, but I love the fact that they got Alan Tudyk for that because he is a great actor. He's a mentally challenged chicken who gets into a lot of funny situations in the film. He really is the comic relief element in this film. There's also kind of another animal sidekick as well that doesn't get much screen time, a pig called Pua. And I actually think that in terms of the production, they made radical changes to this because I remember the first trailer that came out for this film, and the pig really seemed like he was going to be the main character alongside Moana and Maui. And he got a lot of focus in that trailer, the first one that ever came out, and he's kind of been cut from this movie. He's definitely still in the movie, but I do wonder if Disney reworked the script somehow and took the focus away from the pig character and applied that to the chicken, because I absolutely think there's something going on there in terms of the production. We need to talk about the animation now. I have touched on this, the whole hand-drawn element, how it was originally going to be done hand-drawn. But in terms of the CGI animation, this is a film I'm actually fine with being in CGI because the level of freedom they have, the camera angles they can achieve. Not to say you can't do that with 2D animation, but I definitely think that it really heightens this world and brings it to life. And the quality of the animation, the realism of the animation, and the human characters themselves definitely still do have that Disney quality, especially with Moana with the big Disney eyes, which is a trait for Disney that should never go away. But the water effects, that's what everyone's bringing up. And even the water itself is a character in this film. It very much reminds me of the magic carpet from Aladdin, who doesn't have a voice. It's all physical, but you can still get that personality. Even from a certain head tilt of the character or the way they move physically, you can get every ounce of character from that. And it's just gorgeous. There's a moment in this film, without going into spoilers, where young Moana, as a toddler, walks into the water and the water kind of parts and surrounds her. And you get almost like this aquarium-like vision from inside the sea itself. And the music kicks in and tears, like there's no dialogue, it was just music and visuals, but the animation was just so nice that it was absolutely tear-jerking, at least for me. Maybe I'm the only one who gets like that with animated films, but it really is top quality stuff from Disney. I would say it's their best animation in terms of their CGI. I'll still have a soft spot in my heart for 2D animation. It is a very, very different animation style, so I'm not going to compare this to any of the ones from the 90s. But in terms of their CGI animation, and really this goes for CGI animation in every other animating company, like DreamWorks, for example, which do fantastic stuff. The Kung Fu Panda films, for example, are some of my favourite animated movies ever made. Or even if we go to Pixar as well, and I know that Disney and Pixar are tied as a company, but I actually think the animation in this definitely rivals that of Pixar as well. It's really beautiful stuff. I can't hype the animation enough, and I knew I was going to get that from as soon as I saw the trailer. But as this is a Disney film, we need to talk the music as well. And oh my god, the soundtrack to this has definitely become one of my favourite Disney soundtracks. It really, really has. The music itself was done by, and I hope I'm going to pronounce all these names right, I probably won't, but bear with me. The music done by Lin-Manuel Miranda, Auli'i, Foa'i, and Mark Mancina, all combined together to make one of Disney's best soundtracks. Some of the music in this I guarantee is going to be very, very popular. I really hope it tops Let It Go, because I am sick of that song. I never liked that song in the first place, and actually Frozen as a film is one Disney film that I don't actually care for, contrary to popular opinion, but I think that the music in this really, really is a classic. Moana's song herself, which is like the classic princess song, really, really is a beautiful melody. And there's a song in this called We Know the Way, which initially when I heard it on the soundtrack I thought it was going to be the opening song to the film. It was almost like this circle of life quality to it, which really immerses you into this world and this culture, especially with the language used and everything like that. It isn't actually the opening song in the film, though. It happens about a quarter of the way into the movie, which really surprised me. I do wonder if that was initially going to be the opening scene and they rejuggled it in production. I really don't know. And Maui has a great song in the film too, still sung by Dwayne Johnson, called You're Welcome, which I definitely think is in a similar vein to Friend Like Me, as I mentioned. And it's beautiful. It intermingles 2D animation and CGI animation, and it just looks so beautiful. And I love that Ron Clements and John Musker did merge those two animation styles, because they are pioneers in terms of directing of the 2D animated genre, and it's nice to see them still remembering their roots and bringing it into this one. The music really is fantastic. It's a soundtrack that I definitely think any Disney fan should own, and I really do believe that the songs from this movie are going to be some of the catchiest ones Disney's ever produced. There's a villain song in the film as well. There isn't really a straight up direct villain in this film. There's kind of a lava monster called Takai, which I think would probably serve as this film's villain, but there is a villain song in there, which I'll get into in the spoiler section, which is amazing, very, very catchy and comedic. So full marks from me on the music, and it really does immerse you into that world, and I like how Disney have done that. They sort out musicians from that culture who have that musical background, which really brings a character in and of itself into the movie of Moana. So I'll get onto my overall recommendation now, and then I'll move into my spoiler section where I can talk about some of the specifics. Absolutely go and see this movie without a question of a doubt. It's one of the best animated movies of the year, and it's going to be absolutely horrible when I get to the Academy Awards and the category for Best Animated Feature comes up, because there have been so many great ones this year. I think in terms of animated films this year, Kubo and the Two Strings really has done it for me and still has my #1 spot. Kung Fu Panda 3 as well was marvellous. I love that film. But this one too, I think that overall this one would probably get my #2 spot, and Kung Fu Panda 3 a very, very close third. But it's so tough this year. There's been so many great ones. I definitely think this is one of Disney's best, especially in recent years. The direction is on point. The voice talents really embody their characters, and you almost see them as real characters in the film. The music's beautiful, and all these qualities definitely generate to make it one of Disney's best. Although the film itself, in terms of its themes and its message, doesn't really try anything new for Disney or doesn't break into new ground, it very much is embedded into Disney's classic storytelling style in terms of its tropes and the story beats of the film itself. And that's not a problem to me, because Disney is traditional for me, and it works best when it's traditional. I think they take those elements, they make it their own, and they still make it a beautiful movie to behold. Go and see it on the big screen. Hell, go and see it in 3D. The colours are amazing, the animation's just gorgeous, and although I saw this in 2D, I definitely think this is a film that would look great on 3D. And who knows, maybe I will go and see this in 3D as well to get that comparison between the two, but just go and see this movie on the big screen, support it. Disney really don't need your money at this point, but go and see it, support it. It's a beautiful film, one that absolutely has to be seen on the big screen. And although I've collected my Disney films on DVD, after seeing this movie, I'm really regretting not making the jump to Blu-ray or even 4K now that's come out, because this film will look immense in higher definition quality. It really will. Go and see this movie. You won't be disappointed. So now I'm going to get onto my spoiler section now. Not a whole lot to talk about in this one, but there's some special little moments that I did want to bring reference to in my review for this film. First off, there's a moment in this movie where they're attacked by pirates called the Kakamora, which are these little coconut pygmy tribesmen that are trying to steal their gem they're trying to take back to the goddess Tafiti. And it's a Mad Max Fury Road reference, and the directors have said that, the scriptwriters have said that, and I think there was a Twitter post that came out that mentioned that. And it's great. I did not see it coming in the film at all. It's fantastic. The tribesmen themselves, sort of like how they're decked out, kind of look like how they do, like Immortan Joe from that movie. On the side of their ships, they've got all these big tribal drums which they're pounding as they're chasing after Moana and Maui. And even the music, there's like a really, really subtle musical cue, which sounds like Junkie XL's soundtrack. It's like a very small snippet from the Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack. I was just laughing like hell. I hope other people picked up on that it was a Mad Max Fury Road reference. And it's just amazing that Disney would even do a tribute like that, especially to Mad Max Fury Road, of all films they could do. It's great, and this is why this film is amazing, because kids can see it and just go and see it as a new animated film, as a new Disney film, but there's also qualities in there that can appeal to adults. And especially if you're a cinema goer and you watch all of the major films, you can pick up on little bits like this, like the Fury Road reference, and really appreciate it for what it is. I wanted to get onto the kind of villain of this film as well. He's not the main film's villain, and I don't really think the film has one. There's kind of a lava monster they get to at the end, which I'll touch on in a minute. But there's a giant crab in this movie called Tamatoa, voiced by Jermaine Clement, who's hilarious. And I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, but the whole concept is that when they first see him, they don't realise it's a crab. They just see this huge pile of gold with Maui's fishhook on top of it, and they have to take back Maui's fishhook to give him back his power, because he's essentially mortal at this point. He has no power. He needs his fishhook, which gives him that power. So he creates a diversion where Moana has to approach this pile of gold and take the fishhook back. And if I'm going to geek out now a bit, another film reference I picked up, or I guess book reference, was this scene really reminded me of like J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit with the Smaug encounter, because not only is it a pile of gold, but Moana, like Bilbo, has to approach this gold and find an artifact and take it back and steal it. And the monster themselves, if I'm going to compare Tamatoa to Smaug, they are a very boastful character, and Maui tells Moana in this film that you can distract him by bragging about him, making him talk about himself and telling him how great he is. And it's like Bilbo with Smaug, where, you know, he's like Smaug, chiefest and greatest of calamities, or Smaug the stupendous. It really plays up to their boastful side. That's exactly like this character here. But Tamatoa himself, the crab, gets a musical number in the film, which is vastly different to the style of every other song in there. And initially when I heard the song, I really didn't know what I felt about it. Watching it a second time, I love it. And it seems like with his voice when he sings this, you know, he creates like a disco ball in the sky and it's all reflecting off his shell. The animation's great. His voice and how he sings it, it really seems like he's channeling David Bowie with some of the inflections in his voice. It's kind of like a cross between David Bowie and Tim Curry, and I could absolutely see Tim Curry voicing this character. Very similar vocal style to him. If anyone's an animation fan and remembers the 90s movie Fern Gully, with Tim Curry's character of Hexus in that film, with Toxic Love, it very much reminded me of that. And it's a great little song. As I said, it's very different. It's a fantastic villain song, and the animation itself, especially with the directors that did work on The Princess and the Frog with the villain song from that movie, which in my opinion was probably the last truly great villain song in a Disney film, was Friends on the Other Side from that film. Towards the end of that song in Princess and the Frog, there's a moment where the animation takes on a very sort of fluorescent and fibre optic quality to it, neon lights in the darkness when the song ramps up to its climax. And that's kind of what happened in this as well, with it being set right in the depths of the ocean, where you get those kind of sea creatures that are luminescent and fibre optic. The whole animation style changes to that, and it really did remind me of Princess and the Frog. So I do wonder if, because they have the same directors, if they did have those similar qualities to it, and they remembered what they did in some of their previous movies and applied it to this one. It's worth thinking about. And really the other villain in the film is Takar, who's the giant lava monster who I remember seeing on the first few concept arts that came out for this film. And as soon as I saw those pictures, I knew I was going to love this film. I knew I was going to love this character. It's such an impressive creature to behold in the film. I guess I just love flaming creatures in film. I mean, going back to Lord of the Rings, I love the Balrog. I love the Lava Titan from Disney's Hercules. And now this is pretty much the brand new one. And it turns out at the end of the film that Takar is actually Tafiti, who is the sort of Mother Nature goddess that makes everything green and good in the world. And she's forgotten herself. After Maui stole her heart in the prologue to the film, she kind of withered away and turned into this lava creature. And there's a beautiful moment at the end of the film where Moana has this brief little musical number. It's all done in slow motion, where the sea parts, Moana's on one side of the ocean and Takar's on the other one. And Moana's basically singing about, you need to remember yourself, remember who you are, you're not really bad, you've just lost your way. Remember who you are. And that's when Takar kind of stops, the expression changes, and when the heart's placed back into Takar, turns into Tafiti, and it's a beautiful moment. Now, It is very cliched, especially for cartoon films, to beat the villain with the power of love. And if this was used in any other film, I would be saying this is an absolute cop-out of an ending. It really is like you take a villain and you just have him beaten with the power of love and tell them that they're not really bad and they need to remember themselves. But it works in this film because that is the theme of the story. Not just for the character of Takar, but for the character of Maui and Moana themselves. There's a beautiful moment earlier in the film where we get a little bit of insight into Maui's past, how he had human parents and they didn't want him, so they discarded the baby away into the ocean, and he was saved by the gods and granted the title of demigod and all the powers that he has and the shape-shifting powers. And it's a beautiful bit of character development. Moana herself with the overbearing parent, which really reminded me of Little Mermaid with King Triton, how he doesn't want her to venture past the island or the shallows. He wants her to remain on the island and be the new chief and follow in her family's footsteps and never do anything adventurous. And really, on this journey, this is where she discovers herself, like Te Fiti at the end. And actually, the animation on Te Fiti herself, which is like this huge green woman-shaped mountain almost, and when she goes to sleep at the end she forms the formation of the mountain itself. And I actually think that the animators that probably worked on Lava, which was the Pixar short that preceded Inside Out, where they created these personalities out of formations such as a volcano, such as a mountain, and really with the water effects in that and how they made these mountains humanized, I definitely think was applied to this. And I think you probably had some of the same animators working on the two. Maybe Lava was even like a demonstration to see what they could do with the technology, which was brought to the fold in this film. And it really is a beautifully animated moment. Really, really nice ending to the film. And I guess the last thing I can say about this film are the Disney in-jokes and Easter eggs which link to some of Disney's previous movies. I probably missed loads because Disney are always great hiding these things, but some of the ones I noticed were in the You're Welcome song. There's a 2D segment where you see fish swimming up towards the camera, and I noticed that they had a 2D sketch of Flounder from The Little Mermaid, which was a really nice nod to that movie. Makes sense as Ron Clements and John Musker did direct The Little Mermaid. Other things I noticed as well, in the credits towards the end, you get a little picture of Wreck-It Ralph, which is probably a reference to the next Disney animated classic that is coming out next year, will be Wreck-It Ralph 2. Throughout the film as well, Maui is a shapeshifter, can change into different animals, and there's a section where he shapeshifts really, really quickly, and he turns into Sven the reindeer from Frozen. Again, another great reference. And really the only other one I picked up on was that there's a post-credit scene in this film, again with Tamatoa the crab, and he says that, you know, if I was a small little red crab with a fun Jamaican accent that could sing, you'd probably like me, which is, again, another reference to The Little Mermaid. They're all the ones I noticed. There are probably a lot more references throughout that I missed. But yeah, in terms of recommendation, again, definitely go and see this movie. It's one of Disney's best. The animation's fantastic. It's got some great humour to it, some great heart to it, an important message. Not necessarily a different message. This message has been tried and tested in many other Disney films before it. It's another solid effort from Ron Clements and John Musker, and I really do wish they could just direct every Disney movie now because they really know what they're doing. It's a beautiful film. I definitely think it's going to go down in history of one of Disney's best. The voice talents are fantastic. The characters are fully realised. The animation's beautiful. It really is the whole package for what you want in a Disney movie. So that'll do it for my review on Moana. Be sure to comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Moana. Let me know what any of your favourite Disney movies are in the past. Literally anything about Disney you like, please do drop me a comment. Animation's one of the things I'm most passionate about in my life, especially Disney. So it'd be great to have a conversation with you guys in the comments below. So please do drop me a comment. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, we are officially in Star Wars month. In anticipation for the release of Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, we are dedicating the entire month of December to Star Wars. We're going to have top 10 lists, brand new Battle of the Bracket episodes, as well as general Star Wars discussion videos, bringing in new people, fans of Star Wars. It's going to be great. So please do hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to stay updated with all of our content. So that'll do it for me. And until the next video, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.